Hi everybody, welcome to the City of Yorba Linda's Virtual Recreation Center. My name is Nancy and I work in the Parks and Recreation Department. We're here today to show you how you can still have fun and recreate while social distancing and staying safe at home. So something you should know is when you do get a skein of yarn, you need to find out how you start the yarn to get your first cast on tail. So there usually sometimes is an outside tail. You don't want to start with that one if it is on the outside. So what you'll do is you'll go in from the ends and you kind of just feel around for anything that's loose, and then you can pull it out. It might come out in a bunch of chunks here, as you can see, but you usually have one end coming from the skein here, and then you might have a little bit of a mess like this. You just want to start with that one that you can find through there, because then it will come out very evenly through here and you won't have any knots. If you start from the one on the outside, you're generally going to have tons of knots and a big headache. So for the needles that I'm using today, I'm using circular needles, as you can see by this cord here, but I'm using US size 4. On my label here, it does say I can use a 5mm. This is actually 3.5, which is going to give it a much tighter look to your work. So you can go based off of what they have on here, but you're not necessarily tied to what you have to do. Here you can kind of use whatever you have. So just remember that you kind of want to go based on this. You don't want to go too big or too small, because it will definitely change the look of your work. I'm going to show you how to do a stockinette stitch today. Right now I'm going to be using some circular needles. So they have a little loop around them, but you can just use them as if you're using straight needles as well. So to do a stockinette stitch, you're going to be using knit and purl stitches. If you checked out my old video, you would see that we did the garter stitch, which is here on the edge, and this is the stockinette stitch in the center. This is the knit side, and this is our purl side. Having a garter stitch is really good to create a border, and then you can have a stockinette stitch as a good background for your project. So, just a reminder how to do a garter stitch. You're just going to put your needle into the first stitch there, go around with your yarn, pull it over. I did a series of 5 stitches for the border here. So we're going to knit 5 stitches, and then you're going to continue doing the knit stitch all the way across this row here. So we've reached the end of our row. So we're going to move this needle on the left hand side, and as you can see your border on this side with the garter stitch again, and then this is the stockinette stitch. So on this side you're going to do the purl stitch, but once again we're going to do our 5 stitches as a border. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're going to get into our purl. So to do a purl stitch, you're going to take your working yarn, you're going to put it on top of your right needle so that now it's closer to you. You're going to take your right hand needle, insert it into the stitch from the top. Normally we go in from the bottom. This time we're going to go from the top, wrap the needle around, or wrap the yarn around the needle, pull through the stitch and pull over. So once again, your yarn is on this side, going into the top of the stitch, around the needle, pulling through, and up and over. And you're going to do that until the end of your row, or if you're doing what I'm doing and having a border, you're going to do it until the last 5 stitches, or however many you have for your border, because then you'll go back to your knit stitch for the garter stitch. Alright, and there you have your stockinette stitch. So something you can do when you have your knit and purl stitches down is a ribbing, such as this. This is a 2x2, which means we knit 2, purl 2. And it creates a really stretchy kind of border that you can use for hats or blankets or really whatever you'd like to do. It's kind of a nice texture as well. So in order to do that, we're going to take our knitting needle, and we're going to go into the first stitch. We're going to do knit 1, knit 2, around, do a purl, And you can do this 1 by 1, 2 by 2, 2 by 1. They have tons of different ribbing stitches you can do to get your desired effect. You want to also make sure that you're paying attention to pattern notes if you have a pattern that you're working off of, because you want to make sure that you're knitting your knit and purling the purl correctly, because if you have 4 stitches, you'll always start with knitting first and then purling. But if you have a 2 by 2 and you're starting with a series of 2 stitches, then you'll be knitting the purl stitches and purling the knit. I know it doesn't really make sense, but I'll show you in just a second here. I have 32 stitches on my needles here, which means I have a series of 4 stitches in my pattern. So that means that when I reach the end of my row here, I'm going to be on a purl. So knit, purl, purl. So I have the purl on one side, so that means on the next side I have to knit. But if I had a series of 2 stitches, I would have knit, then I'd have to start off with purl. Because I have 38 stitches, I can always start knitting my first stitches every single row that I do. And that is a ribbing pattern. Thank you all for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this segment. Check out our website, www.yorbalindaca.gov/virtual recreation center for more information and resources.